It's time for 41 is the Mic, a weekly Chiefs podcast with Nick Jacobs of KSHB 41 and Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest. 41 is the Mic starts now.
Everyone, welcome in. It is another Chiefs victory that we are talking about here on 41 is the Mic. I am Matt Derrick from Chiefs Digest, alongside Cousin Eddie enthusiast Nick Jacobs from KSHB 41. Nick, Chiefs are 14 and 1. Keep winning, one-score games. I mean, does it get any better than this?
I'm sure it can, but I mean, right now in this moment, they're doing pretty well. We'll see what they can do in the weeks ahead, and hopefully continue to build on what they did part of last week, a lot of this week, and take what they did this week and see if they can build on that in Pittsburgh and be able to survive that one against a Pittsburgh team that had a very physical game against the Baltimore Ravens right after the Chiefs played the Texans.
Yeah, it's going to be a beat up but a motivated Steelers team on Christmas Day. But we, as Chiefs fans know, we know that Christmas Day you can pretty much throw everything out because after what happened last year on Christmas Day, anything can happen.
I don't even know if the Chiefs. I mean, do the Chiefs really technically have practice? Is it something where it's just like the whole team just hangs out in the recovery parts of the building, in the hot tub and whatever else, the hyperbaric chamber, whatever else they may have over there that they need to use?
I mean, they've got one day that they technically could practice, and I don't imagine it's going to be a whole lot of practicing. I mean, this is going to be like just a couple of run-throughs this week and then get on a plane.
Pretty much.
Well, let's start with just the quick news. A couple of injuries coming out of this game. One, for sure, there's going to be long-term. Linebacker Jack Cochran, who's been a pretty integral. I mean, he's a multi-phase, four-phase special teamer for Dave Toub. Fractured ankle. He will likely not be back this season with that kind of an injury. But the two big ones to be monitoring for going into Pittsburgh, Chris Jones with a strained calf and Jawan Taylor with a strained knee. At least the initial word from the MRI is that Chris Jones reportedly has no issues, nothing to be worried about there. But the question is going to be, how quickly can he turn around? Andy Reid, after the game, said that, yes, it was too early for them to have any answers. Probably won't be until Monday that we get to hear anything official, although the coordinators will talk on Sunday, Nick. Won't hear from Andy Reid until Monday, and even then, will they have much to say? What are they just going to be kind of trying to go into game time on Wednesday to see how both those guys can do?
Yeah, I mean, I and that's the big question they're going to have, and the Steelers are going to have too, depending on what injuries each team has. Is it worth it? Because do you make something even worse to where they're going to be out quite a while? For the Chiefs, I mean, Sunday will bring some clarity to them. If by some miracle the Patriots are able to pull it off against the Bills, Chiefs don't have to worry about anything. Like they've got their answer at that point. But I don't know if the Patriots are going to be able to deliver. And so then the Chiefs got to kind of decide what barometer do they want to go against the Steelers, and who do they want to have go against them. They're going to have to decide that with Mahomes. They're going to have to decide that with Chris Jones and Jawan and maybe some other guys potentially, as we see what happens on the injury report whenever Monday rolls around after the aches and pains, happen, after the adrenaline wears off a day or two later, where each player's at. And there were a lot of injuries in that Chiefs-Texans game today on both sides of the ball. I didn't get to fully watch the Steelers-Ravens game. I don't remember them having as much stoppage when I was able to look up during post-game show and helping put together the 5 and 6 o'clock sportscast. So I don't definitively know on that, but I know Pickens didn't play that game, and I didn't see what TJ Watt did or didn't do.
And to kind of segue from the injuries into today's game, I mean, one thing I think you can take away for all of the angst and turmoil that Chiefs fans put them through this week with the Patrick Mahomes ankle injury, I mean, the Chiefs' philosophy on injuries and trusting their players and trusting the process, I mean, worked pretty well on Saturday for Patrick Mahomes. And you know that they're going to do the same thing with Chris Jones and Jawan Taylor. They're going to listen to the player. If the player feels that they can play, the medical staff feels that they can play, they'll play. If one of them doesn't, they're not going to. And obviously, like I said, I mean, so many people were worried about Mahomes this week. Mahomes showed that you can trust him. He's going to make the right decision. And obviously, this was a, as our dear friend Therese Paylor would say, this was an over my dead body game.
Yeah, and I mean, look, Mahomes, he just got a certain mentality and certain level to where I can only imagine the pain that or irritation he's going to have in that ankle whenever Sunday rolls around, and you know what he has to do to get up to speed to potentially play on Christmas Day. So the early game was not a good indicator for the NFL that this was the best choice possible and how they approached this and did this. But I mean, next year the game will be on a Thursday, so they'll have a little bit more cover behind them on that front. But yeah, no, it was the Texans lost a lot more in that game when they lost Tank Dell, and we'll get into that more so later. But that was a huge blow to them for their playoff run and what they're trying to do. And I now remember the Steelers, Joey Porter Jr. was declared out for the rest of the game against the Ravens, but I'll have to kind of look in when I watch that game about what happened there.
Well, Chiefs get the victory today, and Andy Reid said that he thought that this was the best performance by his team all season, and incorporating all three phases. I'm not sure I can disagree with that, Nick, and certainly not based on the offense. Offense had a good day today, and part of it, you noted this stat from Next Gen Stats. Patrick Mahomes had 2.5 seconds to throw today. I think he had, just one throw over 4 seconds. This was his
41 attempts, yeah.
And this was his fastest time to throw since week 4 of 2021. Important, I think, to note in that game, that was a 42-30 win over the Eagles. Dude went 24-30 for 278 yards and 5 touchdowns. So getting rid of the football quickly is not a bad thing for Patrick Mahomes. He did that today and had a pretty good day.
Yeah, having play calling that every week pretends that Patrick Mahomes has an injury that they need to protect at all costs. Actually, that's a mindset. If I were them and from a play calling perspective, I would keep going forward.
I think I will too. Just assume that every single week that Patrick Mahomes has a high ankle sprain, and you're going to have yourself a fantastic game plan.
Just prepare with that mentality. I mean, you would think paying a guy getting paid $500 million would be able to do that. But hey, if this is how it helps make that happen on a regular basis, light that candle. But I'm not going to pretend that Hollywood Brown and Xavier's performance didn't help make a lot of that possible.
Well, that's kind of where they wanted to go to next. I mean, obviously Mahomes has a good day, but was really impressed by what Hollywood Brown was able to do. Did not look terribly rusty to me. There was maybe one play that he and Mahomes were not on the same page. But other than that, looked pretty comfortable out there.
Yeah, Hollywood looked right into form like he'd just gotten done with training camp. So he didn't look tired. He didn't look worn out. I mean, him and Patrick, obviously there's a couple plays here and there throw-wise that if they were where they would be at in a regular season, it's a whole different ball game. Probably a couple times Pat tosses it deep to him on a couple plays to where maybe he gets that ball over, Justin Watson, depending on how they use Xavier to keep that spot open over the middle. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing for Hollywood going forward is, can he slowly replace Justin Watson in his role in the offense? And if he's able to do that, I think this offense continues to build on the success that they did this week. Because when him and Xavier are on the field together, that really stresses out a defense, and it did a handful of times today.
Boy, and there was the one play which resulted in the throw to Hollywood Brown. You had those three guys lined up. I think it was the first time that we saw it today, but they had them lined up all on the same side to the left in kind of a triangle formation, diamond form, not the full 4 diamond formation, Nick. But and the moment I saw it, I was like, okay, one of these guys is getting wide open, because I just don't see how you can put Worthy, Brown, and DeAndre Hopkins all on the same side of the field, and the defense is not just going to freak out. And the Texans defense absolutely freaked out a little bit.
Yeah, and they know how the Texans are going to handle things out of that formation, whether they'll drop into zone or if they'll try to use man on it. They knew with that level of speed they were going to have to drop into some variation of zone. So, like when you do that, that's the respect that Brown and Worthy together are going to command, whether they're on the same side or they're on a different side, and that's just going to be tough for a lot of opponents. And then you sneak in DeAndre Hopkins, who kind of replaces part of Travis Kelce's production overall, and then Juju Smith-Schuster, you kind of use a piece there. I mean, if Hollywood Brown can stay healthy, if Xavier Worthy can stay healthy, Hopkins can stay healthy, and they kind of blend in, Kelce in certain spots, use Noah Gray, and then you get a healthy Kareem down the stretcher for the playoffs. Like there's a lot of promise with this offense.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously the Chiefs brought in DeAndre Hopkins to be the Rashee Rice replacement. That's an incredible transition. I mean, Rashee Rice was having a great season, but DeAndre Hopkins is a future Hall of Famer. I mean, obviously different points in their career, but when you're able to just make that replacement, that's just something most teams can't find themselves in a situation like that. But I think we're also finding that the Hopkins being on this team has a greater impact than just what he puts up on the field. Yep. Because he talked about it, and Xavier Worthy talked about it a little bit today, about just the impact that he's having on Worthy. And Hopkins said that, hey, he is Xavier Worthy's harshest critic. But you also see he's probably one of his biggest fans too. And Worthy's accepting that. And I think you're seeing that because he seems to really be maturing in the last few weeks. And I don't think there's any doubt DeAndre Hopkins is responsible for some of that.
Yeah, I'm just going to say this very bluntly. The combination of Juju Smith-Schuster, DeAndre Hopkins, and Hollywood Brown, that's what is helping Xavier get to this point. And the crazy thing is, how quickly would it have happened for Rice if he had the combination of those three guys mentoring him last year? So, I mean, yeah, for Xavier, the reason he's taking the leaps and bounds he has is because of those three guys being the veterans and mentors and showing him how to work and how to approach things. So that move where they traded for DeAndre, and like that one catch that DeAndre made today where he somehow tapped both feet in, but was able to do it with such a little fine blade of, just a couple handful of blades of grass or less than half a ruler from the boundary, and was able to just toe tap, make the catch, control the football and everything. Just stuff like that. That's not going to go unnoticed by Xavier Worthy. Like he's going to learn from that, and that's why that touchdown he almost had today that was in the end zone there, where he wasn't able to get that left foot in. Because he got caught up on his right foot and everything. A couple weeks ago, he's not as able to control his body as well as he did there. Like he didn't drift as much as he had, prior times. Like you can see the growth, you see him learning, and I'm going to always credit DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood Brown, and Juju Smith-Schuster all collectively for that, because I'm telling you, those three guys are making a difference to where they're going to help Xavier even after those guys potentially move on down the road. You hope they don't, but if they do move on down the road, they are going to be big contributions to where Xavier's career can potentially go if he's healthy.
Yeah, and I asked, D-Hop about that particular play, and I said, Chiefs fans are going to see it for the first time, that you make these plays like every single week. But I'm like, how many times do you think you've made a catch like that, which is being able to tap your toes in bounds like that in your career? And he said, countless. Yeah. But he said the only reason why I'm able to do it is because when I was a young receiver in Houston, Andre Johnson was on me all the time, and nothing was good enough. And he was always pushing me to be better. And then Larry Fitzgerald did the same thing in Arizona. And the fact that, a guy like DeAndre Hopkins is talking about Larry Fitzgerald making him a better receiver in Arizona, but he was already an established star in the NFL. Mm-hmm. I mean, that tells you that's exactly kind of influence that you need in this receiver room. And especially if, when with Rashee Rice still in this receiver room and being on the field, trust me, got a locker right across from D-Hop. He's learning this stuff too. Mm-hmm. And if the Chiefs invest more in that receiver room, it's going to continue to pay off if they're able to keep him beyond this season, which I think the Chiefs would love to, because he's had an incredible influence on this team. Mm-hmm. What else? Anything else on the offensive side? I mean, we also got to see Wanya Morris come in for a quarter, and honestly, did not hear his name called a lot, so I'll be interested to see on second watching and everything how he kind of stood up, but didn't look like he had any trouble for the most part on the right side.
Well, for me, right tackle is kind of more of a natural position for Wanya. I don't think left tackle has been his role. I think he's either down the road, he's either going to be an interior guard or he's a right tackle. Because whenever I was watching him on some of the coaches' film, I remember seeing him at right tackle. And if I remember correctly, I think he played next to Trey Smith at Tennessee at the right tackle spot. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. And so I just think that's more natural for him. I think he can think less on that side. He's not like, okay, I got to do this and hit this punch. I'll check it out whenever I watch the film, but I got a sneaky suspicion that it's just a little bit more comfortable for him, a little bit more muscle memory, and a little bit more familiarity with it for him.
Yeah, and I think putting just a bow on the offensive performance of the day, I mean, it was once again a good day for the run game. Now, some of that was augmented by an injured Patrick Mahomes scrambling for 26 yards. You got a couple of touches out of Xavier Worthy for 10. I mean, Isaiah Pacheco, 9 for 26 was a little bit disappointing, and obviously he couldn't convert on that 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1, but Kareem Hunt, 11 carries, 55 yards, especially there in the 4th quarter. He just grinded it out as they're trying to run out the clock against the Texans. I mean, Pacheco is the starter right now, Nick. I mean, should that change? I mean, do you think the Chiefs are going to reconsider that going forward, or at least, a majority of the work going Kareem's way once you get to January?
All right. So a little bit loaded there. Here's what we're going to do on this. Pacheco needs to get his reps to get back into rhythm. So, like, Steelers, if he runs 15, 20, 30 times, good with it. Let him run that same amount against Denver. Let him get back into what rhythm he can. Let him get those reps. Let him get comfortable by the time he gets to the playoffs. Kareem needs rest. Like, so if you can scale back his carries towards limit anything other than clutch situations or short down yardage, I personally wouldn't use him a ton. And I'd let that wear and tear that he had earlier this year when the tread on the tires got pretty low. I would allow him to build back up, and then some of those clutch runs that he had there in the 4th quarter look like the Kareem of old. And I would save those for the playoffs to have the battering ram, because I think he'll take it to a different level because he knows how close he is to winning a championship with the team that drafted him and where he wanted to win a championship all along. And I think he'll have the motivation. I think mentally it's there. I think the ability is there. I just think he needs his body to get fresh to be able to do that for a 3-game stretch. Hopefully, if the Chiefs can get that first round bye.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, I would have absolutely no problem with getting Pacheco more work, especially if you're able to clinch things in Pittsburgh and seal up that number one spot. Let him get some of those reps, knock some of the rust off, come back from the injury. But Kareem he looks fresher. I mean, his efficiency certainly went down after that peak when he was getting 25, 27 touches a game. Mm-hmm. Couple of weeks of a little bit less workload, he looked fresher out there today. So that's why
give him even less for a couple of weeks. Do enough to keep him in rhythm, but not enough to wear him out.
And then get ready for January.
Then unleash.
Release the hounds. All right. Offense had a very good day. Defense got the job done, but it wasn't perfect. I think if the one thing we want to, let's start with the good, Nick, because one thing I want to, let's be positive here. I thought Trent McDuffie played an absolutely incredible game. Just obviously the job he did when he was on Nico Collins, but he had 2 tackles for a loss that were pretty important. I mean, he just blew up those plays, and and that really, I mean, set back a couple of Texans drives.
Yeah, the Texans kept trying to do that the smoke screen out there to Nico, and then I think Tank Dell a couple times, and they just kept trying to throw that over and over again. That was predictable, and I mean, it had been on tape and it was there, so like they knew what to do. It's just the Chiefs were doing a good job defeating the block and not letting it stop them to hesitate. Like are they going to do double move over top of it? They didn't allow themselves to hesitate because they knew there was help behind them, so they were able to kind of work with it and everything. So yeah, look, I mean, they were aggressive at the corner spot a lot of the times, and they made a big difference because there was only one part, and we'll get to that later, and it actually ties into something I think the Chiefs need to do play calling wise down the road on offense. But there was only one thing that was kind of that kind of snuck with them that they're going to need to add to what they do, but also remember it for down the road because opponents are going to see that and they're going to try it.
Yeah. The one probably disappointment of the day for the defense to me, the pass rush was not very good. CJ Stroud had all the time in the world to throw today. And it wasn't that they didn't have a couple of singular moments and they weren't able to get some pressure eventually. Mike Pennell after the game found out he had a sack, and he didn't know he had a sack because that was when Stroud ran out of bounds for a 5-yard loss. How did you feel that? What was the struggle with the pass rush today?
So the way that you have to attack the Texans and the way that they're weak along their offensive line, that they're going to have to invest heavily in down the road. To get to where they want to go as a playoff team, because this is what's going to burn them in the playoffs is that offensive line. And if a team has a corner who can take away Nico Collins, those two things, once those happen, the Texans are going to they're going to have a really tough sledding in the playoffs. But you have to attack the guards, and you have to do there's some loops you have to do, and the Chiefs tried some of those loops. But the problem is there's a certain combination they have to use rush-wise that's going to involve Minihue, Chris Jones, and George Karlaftis in some way. And then they're rotating Wharton sometimes, and then they're rotating Mike Dana sometimes. But that's kind of your rotation. They don't have guys who they can keep them fresh and kind of keep them from wearing down. So right now they just don't have an extensive D-line rotation. It's like in college basketball where you got the starting 5 and a couple off the bench, and if you can do that, then you can, make your way through an NCAA tournament. The Chiefs just don't have a pass rush that's deep enough to be able to do that, and so they have to supplement some of that with some of the blitzes, and when they time those blitzes and everything. So, although the opportunities were there, and I was hoping to kind of see a little bit more attack from the Chiefs D-line on their own without needing blitz help, I could tell how tired they were getting, just how worn down they were getting at times, and it wasn't going to be there because Karlaftis was always kind of containing and then chasing around. Dana had some good bull rushes. And Minihue, when him and Dana were inside and looped at that one point, when Minihue came around and it was really kind of caused CJ Stroud to do that jump pass, and Trent McDuffie was able to intercept it, and Dana's bull rushing back into his lap. Like, those are the things a lot of opponents have been able to do this year, and that's why he's been sacked 45 times, is just because that interior just really struggles and they've had to mix match. But where I had frustration is how many offensive linemen, they lost like 2 offensive linemen at various points today, and they were the equivalent of a MASH unit, and the Chiefs pass rush didn't get home any quicker at times than what it did. And also the theme of the Texans this year, because I watched all their games, is they have a good game plan in the first half, then they can't make the necessary adjustments in the second half, and then teams just kind of wear them down and wear them out. So the Chiefs were able to do that in the final 3 to 4 drives, especially most of that fourth quarter. But that third quarter, they were still able to kind of hang strong there. And I really kind of thought the Chiefs were going to be able to pull away a little bit quicker. And that the defense was going to be able to potentially do part of that. And that's part of me for having that expectation on that front. But yeah, no matter what happens this year, Chiefs are going to have to get deeper in their pass rush to really be able to kind of throw at opponents what they're going to need to.
I think you noted on social media that Chiefs blitz, I think 44% today. Yeah. It's a very high blitz rate, but 2, we also saw the problems when you blitz and you don't get there, or the quarterback makes the right reads, because the Texans had a couple of big gains with guys who were just absolutely wide open. Because if you don't get there with the blitz, somebody's going to be open. And CJ Stroud a couple of times today was able to find the guy that was open and out in the flat, and that resulted in some big games against better quarterbacks. That can be an even bigger problem.
So that leads into the point I was going to make that I was referencing and teasing a little bit ago.
Glad I could set you up.
Thank you. It's very kind of you. You are a regular.
We didn't even plan that.
You are a regular point guard right there, sir. I am a power forward that's going to at least try to get it to the rim. Like, don't think I'm gonna get it over, but I'll try to get there. So what the Texans did, this is what I hope the Chiefs add into their offense. And this is something I've kind of talked about to give Patrick Mahomes an escape hatch. There's a couple times with Schultz and Robert Woods to where they would stay in to block and help out initially. Then when the Chiefs drop back into their zone coverages and we're going past the sticks, almost 5 yards past the sticks, they would release off into the flats like a 2nd and 12, like a 3rd and 15, 3rd and 20. And then they got it to Schultz and Woods a handful of times and converted. And so, I mean, I'm not saying the opponents the Chiefs are going to go against every time are going to perform the same way, but those are the type of savvy things to where, one, you help the tackle if they need it, but then also you give Patrick Mahomes an escape hatch. So if you gave him a comfortable escape hatch right there with something where somebody has a delayed release, I think that goes a long way down the road here of keeping favorable down and distances.
Would love to see the Chiefs steal that because it has been used very effectively against them this season. And the Texans were better than almost anybody. But you're right. I mean, the Chiefs could absolutely use that. And maybe they had a few other moments today. I mean, maybe P. Ryan could have fit in that with a couple of the catches that he made because usually we talk about Samaje P. Ryan being a 3-down back. He had a couple of catches on 1st and 2nd down that turned into some pretty good plays today.
Then he had the massive 3rd and 4 that really helped him set that off. Him and Kareem closed out that game for him with those 2 plays.
Yeah, one other note I wanted to make on the defense, just because he's our guy, Nick. Jaden Hicks once again just always seems to find himself in the middle of plays. I mean,
yes,
take your pick. I mean, the interception. I mean, it just seems like anytime there's a play on the field being made, I'm like, hey, look, there's Jaden Hicks.
So I mean, look, he's got the athletic range that they love at safety, and that's why whenever somebody asked us on the Q&A, who were your 11 if you're Steve Spagnuolo, and I threw him in there. It's because he's got the best athletic range outside of Trent McDuffie in that secondary right now. And he helps in a lot of ways. And like there was one that was going to almost be a touchdown that CJ Stroud tossed up there, and it was a double coverage. And I mean, he was in perfect position to be able to knock the ball down and to keep that from being a touchdown. If he's not back there, and if it's another safety that's slower, that might actually have been a touchdown. Maybe that game's different there in that second, I believe it's the second quarter at the time, second quarter. I'm pretty sure second quarter. And then, who knows how that second half goes. But yeah, he, like, athletically, man, he's so impressive, and he's got the instincts that you want, and the way he can come downhill, the way he closes downhill, and just everything of that nature. Like, he's got a ton of promise, and it's why you and I saw Steve Spagnuolo constantly working with him up at training camp and talking through him and having him observe stuff, because they wanted it to pay off in this time of the year. And he's kind of that underrated thing to where there's not enough tape on him right now for opponents to have a good gauge on what he can and can't do and where they can and can't attack. But there's enough of ability for him to get reps right now. So I'm kind of curious to see how the snap count goes over the final 2 games before they get to the playoffs. But yeah, Jaden Hicks is a huge asset to that Chiefs defense right now, and he could be a big reason why they don't give up explosive plays in the playoffs at some of the rates they were beforehand.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, the Chiefs drafted Jaden Hicks for the likelihood of replacing Justin Reid next year. And hey, I wouldn't argue with the Chiefs if they found a way to keep Justin Reid, but Jaden Hicks is well on his way to being a starter and a big-time player in this league, in my opinion. I feel like this should probably be a weekly segment, Nick, because Chiefs play nothing but close games, and of course they win them. But the segment could be, how close were the Chiefs to losing this game? And I asked that question only because of this, Nick, because the Texans were averaging over 7 yards a play before Tank Dell's injury. Yeah. And that offense, bless its heart, fell apart after that injury. And obviously, we saw it was emotionally for a lot of these guys. CJ Stroud obviously was emotionally affected, and with good reason. I mean, this is the second straight year that the kid has had a season-ending injury, what certainly looks like a season-ending injury here. That was a nasty-looking injury, too. An ambulance comes onto the field, so you can understand the emotion. But I don't know how much credit to give the Chiefs defense for what they did after that, how much to, that injury played a role, because that offense was not the same. I mean, they were averaging over 7 yards a play up to that point. After that, I think it was 19 plays, 36 yards for the Texans offense the rest of the way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a stark night and day difference, especially when you looked at the Chiefs, by the way. The Chiefs, before the Tank Dell injury, had 35 plays before it, 35 plays after it. They had 187 yards before it. They had 188 yards after it. It was just an absolutely mirror performance for the Chiefs offense.
Yeah. Part of it that I saw, and I think this kind of applies back to, if you think back to the 2021 Cincinnati Bengals AFC Championship game, Tyler Boyd was wrecking the Chiefs secondary that year when a lot of those guys were rookies. And or maybe 2022 AFC Championship game when they were able to get the redemption before they played the Eagles. I remember correctly. I think it's 2022. I think 2021 is when they lost 2022. So I'm talking about 2022. I apologize, but my numbers are back in the direction they need to be. Once Tyler Boyd pulled his hamstring in that game, they were able to double Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. But before that, Trent McDuffie in his rookie year was going one-on-one on a regular basis with Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd was a skilled enough route runner that he was just tearing up that Chiefs defense, and that it wasn't working out well for the Chiefs. And it reminded me a lot of that today, to where Schultz and Nico Collins are who they were force feeding on a regular basis, especially Collins, because he's, in my opinion, he's more than half of their offense and the importance of their offense right now. And part of that's because they don't have Stephon Diggs. Part of that's because, they didn't have Mechie. But Collins is like the key to their offense right now if you watch them throughout the year. Schultz had a bigger day than he normally, than I've normally seen him do. But that's, I'm not surprised, because the Chiefs kind of covering tight ends. It's, hit or miss some days. And then Dell was kind of filling that Tyler Boyd role of the 2022 AFC Championship game. And he was kind of being that third guy that was making the difference. So once he got hurt, it now was easier to take away Schultz and Nico Collins. So then the Texans tried to lean on Joe Mixon in the run game to make up the difference, and some screen passes when they were kind of predicting the Chiefs were going to blitz. And some of them were able to work. But for the most part, I think that's the tie that turned the game. And then on top of it, how emotional C.J. Stroud got, he's clearly close with them, and they clearly have a good bond as a quarterback receiver, because just how distraught he was and how upset he was at that point. If Joe Mixon wasn't on that team to be able to talk to him on the sidelines the way that he was, to try to help him reset and get his mind right and back into competitive spirit in football game, I don't know if C.J. Stroud comes back from that, like mentally in that game, because he just looked like he was checked out there for a minute and he couldn't think about anything else. And that's a tough situation to be in, obviously, as a second-year quarterback, and and being able to compartmentalize stuff like that and try to have to put the human aspect aside until after the game. Some players are able to do it. Some players struggle with it. And CJ was having trouble given the situation, what was going on. And I think it wouldn't stun me if part of it, he felt guilty because of that throw and everything, potentially. Wouldn't stun me if he said that if I listened to a presser or something, because, it looked like Robert Woods was trying to dive for the catch, and, Dell was the one who was clearly intended for. And yeah, it just, that loss really kind of took the wind out of the Texans' sail, and they just never really seemed like they truly were able to recover from that. But that was for the Chiefs' benefit to their defense. That was what was able to kind of put over the top. And then in the fourth quarter, they dialed some things up and made some key clutch plays to make C.J. Stroud uncomfortable in their pass rush. Chris Jones was big in that, and then the Joshua Williams blitz that ended up in a sack, like that was huge. And so, the Chiefs were able to make some plays down the stretch, but I'm not going to discount the fact that Tank Dell not being out there did help to, help be able to use the resources the way that they need. But then that also tells me Steven Nelson down the road here, if he's able to come in and help stabilize at a spot, how much can that help the Chiefs be able to match up with three potential receiving threats more so than they were today?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, and now that with this game behind us, and you start to turn a little bit towards the Steelers, yeah, does raise the question about whether or not this might be the game that we do see Steven Nelson for the first time. Since the Chiefs are obviously clearly still looking for a solution at those other cornerback spots, and we don't know if the Chiefs will have Chamari Connor back for this game either, so might be another round of Chris Roland Wallace. I thought Chris Roland Wallace had at first blanch a good game. I know he had a couple of plays. He had a nice adjustment on a run that he stuffed. I think I probably need to see more of it and watch back on the replay just specifically to see how he kind of held up in the slot. But didn't seem like he had that bad of a day. But the Chiefs were continuing to rotate through Josh Williams, Najee Johnson, Keith Taylor again got some snaps. They're still looking for a solution to who needs to be out there on the field with Trent McDuffie because they haven't figured it out yet.
Oh, they want them to figure it out for them. They want a player to step up and be that solution. So they're giving each one of them opportunities to be the solution. It's just a matter of if any of them can physically and mentally be able to step up and be the player that Jalen Watson was for them.
Exactly. And we do get a lot of questions about Jalen Watson and his potential return, especially because he's been posting some, inspiring messages on social media that he seemingly wants to be able to be back this season. Chiefs aren't counting on that because with his injury that he suffered, the expectation was that the recovery was going to be 12 weeks at minimum, if not more. Mm-hmm. The best case scenario would be that he could get back on a football field maybe the week before the Super Bowl, but that's not when you get somebody back in and just plug them back onto the field. So it's extremely unlikely. I'm not betting against Jalen Watson because I'm not going to bet against anybody, or I don't want it to be like you're saying, hey, this guy can't do it. All the encouragement in the world, Jalen Watson, but him getting back on the field this season is not what the Chiefs are planning on. So that's not necessarily what's going to happen. So they need to find their answer somewhere else. And whether it's Steven Nelson or one of the other three, somebody just needs to claim the job eventually.
That's what they're hoping to happen by rotating them. They're wanting somebody to step up and take it.
All right, I think we both had maybe one eye on a little bit of the Steelers-Ravens today, so I don't know if we've got huge insights from that game, but just generally overall peeking ahead towards the Steelers, Nick. This is a physical team, but seems like they played a pretty physical game today against the Ravens as well.
That's the part that I don't think will get talked about enough is the last time the Steelers took on the Ravens in a very physical game in Pittsburgh on a Sunday. They had to go play the Cleveland Browns on that Thursday night football game that ended up in the snow with Jameis Winston leaping up for the touchdown and having the NFL Films moment in the snow where he jumps in for the touchdown. And it's a cool theatrical thing to see. Picture perfect moment. The Steelers were sluggish in that game before the snow started, and they were sluggish when the snow was going on, and they were sluggish afterwards. Russell Wilson took some big shots today, had the fumble when he got smacked in the side of what looked like his right hip, maybe rib area there. Took a big hit where he fumbled the ball and then turned it over. And then he had the pick six that Marlon Humphreys was able to jump on. Joey Porter left the game. TJ Watt had the ankle injury beforehand, and I didn't see how he was able to do today. So, that was before, and George Pickens didn't play because of the hamstring thing, and I personally think they were saving him for this upcoming game. To where I think George Pickens does play in the Chiefs game. If they were having to choose between the two, I think they were choosing Chiefs over Ravens if they have that choice, but we'll see how things unfold this week. But yeah, I think the Steelers, they had a physical game against the Eagles. They had a physical game against the Ravens, and it's going to be a matter of who can control the tempo early, who can really push through the aches and pains that they have and kind of dictate the tempo. And if the Chiefs can establish the ground game early, and if they can get to a comfortable lead, I think they can kind of tee off on either Russell Wilson or Justin Fields and really kind of salt that game away if they can go down that road. But potentially having Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy, those would be two guys that I think could help a great deal. We'll see how Noah Gray, what he pops up on the injury report with that hit that he took that did not look good. But But yeah, there's going to be a lot of guys that I don't envy the position either team is in, and I don't envy the position the Texans and Ravens are in, because those are a lot of guys that are going to have bruises, be sore, and it wasn't. We'll see how the football We'll see how the football product looks on Wednesday. I just hope it isn't something that frustrates a lot of people on a national stage, that the NFL gets pretty criticized because the product suffered because of that situation.
Well, if the New England Patriots beat the Buffalo Bills on Sunday, Nick, I'm going to bet that the product is going to suffer, because I would expect that the Chiefs would probably rest a few people once they got that number 1 seed clinched.
Definitely should, if that is the scenario that happens. That's what the greater Kansas City area and Chiefs fans across the world will be rooting for, and I totally get it. I've learned in life, keep expectations low so you can be surprised in a great way.
That's the only way to go through life, Nick.
And yep.
Chiefs' magic number is 1, so all that they need is a Buffalo tie or a loss on Sunday, or I believe both a win and a tie against the Steelers, I believe, would clinch that for the Chiefs. So they could have the number 1 seed clinched by as early as Sunday, and could have it clinched by Wednesday if not. So
you're hoping for Sunday. Makes things a lot less complicated.
It's a busy week ahead. We've got coordinators that we're going to be talking to via Zoom on Sunday. Monday will be the only live availability with Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and the players. We don't know necessarily exactly when we're going to either have the next episode of 41 is the mic, because it's going to be Christmas Day.
Oh, yeah.
Will it be on the 25th or early on the 26th? We'll figure it out.
You'll find out if it's a stocking stuffer for you after the game or not.
We'll see if we can figure out a way to coordinate our schedules to do a live Q&A this week too. So I know it's not going to be Tuesday night, which it normally is, because that's I have a conflict. So
yeah, it's Christmas Eve, Matt. It's called Christmas Eve. Okay,
so we're not going to do that to anybody on Christmas Eve. So if you were counting on that, I'm sorry. But everybody, we'll get the schedule to you when we know for sure. You know, you can be able to get that.
You sound like a PR person right now.
I know, don't I? I guess my old roots are coming out. Yeah. You'll definitely get 41 is the mic after the game, so we'll have that for you for sure coming into your feed. So watch for that. I want everybody to have a great holiday week. Stay safe if you're traveling. Wish you all a great holiday, and
don't forget to watch Christmas Vacation, like I will. I won't forget. I will watch it. That's what I'm saying.
That is a nice look there, Nick. I love it.
Matt, that is a real nice podcast. Real nice podcast.
You've been listening to 41 is the Mic, presented by KSHB 41, your home of the Chiefs and Chiefs Digest.